Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Peggy Smith here joining us again. What a beautiful background. Is that your living room?
I wish it was. I'm dog sitting right now for a CEO of a pharmaceutical company.
It's gorgeous. Well, it looks great. So please introduce yourself as a hypnotherapist. I know there's so much to talk about.
Yes, I'm a registered nurse, about 45 years experience. I've been practicing hypnosis almost 20 of those years. And I'm located outside of Philadelphia in the King of Prussia area. It's in one of the suburbs. My telephone number to reach me is area code 267-593-5557. And I have a website. It's notjusthypnosis.biz, B-I-Z. So today we're going to be talking about, since school is getting ready to start,
academic performance. Yes, and sports performance.
Yes, two things I think that are, and also beginning of school years, anxiety provoking for a lot of students. I used to love getting the new notebooks, and they're not scribbled on, they're not
The
bent.
marble notebook. I have a 6 and 8-year-old. I'm going to have to do that too. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and especially if you went to Catholic school, you had to get everything covered in brown paper bags. And
yeah.
But even though I was excited about the new notebooks and everything, there's always a little bit of butterflies in your stomach every year. You're, not sure that you're going to make friends with everybody, and there's going to be new people, or if you're a new person. I was actually an Army brat, so I frequently was the new person going to school. And hypnosis can do a lot to help with the new school year. Anxieties. It can help students improve their learning abilities. It manages test anxiety. It can overcome some mental blocks that might be stopping them from achieving their full potential. And it can help them develop positive study habits. And all of these things are pretty simple to achieve with hypnosis. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. Mm-hmm. Most school anxiety, test anxiety, studying issues, really the basis of it is anxiety. So by starting off getting emptying your mind, a nice calm background energy, creating that and a positive attitude, you can create in the child's mind at whatever age level they're at, exciting looking forward to this. And if they have some negative school experiences in the past, and we know about them ahead of time, I can address that on an individual basis. It does a lot for bullying issues, because along with anxiety, hypnosis helps increase self-esteem.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, just a lot of different, a lot of children just feel like they have to be perfect, and it's not always the parents driving them to that.
Especially with social media and everything that's happening. Everyone's on social media. Everyone looks perfect. Everyone posts like the best things. Everyone's like missing out or thinking their life isn't as good as or cool as someone else's. It's a lot of pressure. It's always been pressure in school to live up to that kid. And then you see things and it's like, oh my gosh, right?
And sometimes you see that need to be perfect, though, as young as preschool and kindergarten. I know each one of my kids were different. I had 4 of them. My oldest boy, he would finger paint with one finger, and because he didn't want to get messy.
Yeah.
And he would, he just, always hung up his clothes. He would always color in the lines and get upset if he missed the line. Nobody in my family was putting that pressure on him. He just seemed to have an innate high anxiety level about being perfect. Could be that he's very creative. He's been playing the piano since he was 3. He's now like 45. So maybe it's, that part of that creativity, mindset that his brain is wired for. I had another child who could care less. Everything was scribble, even if it was the walls or the floors, or not even with crayons. Mm-hmm. So each child is different, but hypnosis can be tailored to each child. If a child has struggled with getting good grades, then that increases their anxiety. Mm-hmm. And, sometimes the child's trying really hard and it's just a disconnect between his way of learning and way of, whatever the teacher is presenting, and it's not a defect. And once we help share that thought with the child in his mind, he understands that he just learns a little differently, and we can, help him out. And the same kind of philosophies go into sports. And then now they might have a tendency to be even more perfect because they know if they're not good enough, they get cut from the team. Um, so it's really about controlling anxiety, limiting, finding ways, healthy ways to deal with the stress. And as you increase self-esteem, letting them know that they're not defective if they got cut. They gave it their all, and that's all that, that's there's always next year you can try, or the next time, the next sport that you want to try out. But a lot of usually the parents that bring a child for sports or academic hypnosis are not the kind of parents that are really pushing these kids to, and it would be angry if they got cut.
Hmm.
And each child is different. And, I remember my first two children were special in the brighter end of the spectrum. My third child, who was normal, the pediatrician kept saying, "Would you stop comparing? You've got a normal child for a change." And
Yeah.
I thought something was wrong with the third one because he was so different, and really wasn't behind or slow. He just was different compared to the other two. But parents, we always compare, even though we try not to.
I know we do. Guilty, guilty. But even someone with like ADHD, attention deficit hyper disorder, I mean, all these things can be helped with
They
hypnosis.
can.
Bullying too. I mean, there's a lot that goes with going back to school. I know if I'm jumping out of order, but yes.
No, that's okay, because with ADHD, hypnosis starts off by trying to calm the mind, explaining that they're not defective if their mind is always racing, and they don't understand why
Yep.
they have ants in their pants. I was in a
Mhm.
restaurant the other day, and a grown man in his 50s is sitting in the booth, and his legs were just shaking constantly, like a little. And I had to laugh because it reminded me of the ants in your pants that the teachers back when I was in school would talk about.
Mhm.
Um, Now they probably just have other words for it. I've been out of the elementary
Me
school,
too.
but I can teach children how to focus their attention, and how to eliminate distractions, like when they see or feel something that's pulling them away from what they're trying to focus on. There can be like little trigger words or sentences that, to trigger their mind. Okay, we can do that later. Let's, see what we're trying to do right now. And even if it's in bites of 5 minutes at a time. Um, ADHD kids have beautiful attention span with the video games for some reason. There's all kinds of research on that. And since I had most of my kids were on Ritalin, I was a little leery to let them just go wild with the game. But then I realized in reading the research, the video games actually help the ADHD child focus on something, and they developed some skills that they could then transfer to other areas of their life. It wasn't just zoning out and tuning out the rest of the world, although it sure seems like that even with a normal kid on video games. Um, it can do help the child improve his memory. Like, spelling is a problem, especially if you have to talk in public, and the spelling bees and things like that. And maybe you're dyslexic, but it's a mild and you're not labeled yet, whatever, but it's a problem. That increases a lot of anxiety. And in my assessment of the child, because I am a nurse and because I've also been a special ed teacher, I can pick up on some of those subtle things that maybe that's not even officially labeled yet. It doesn't always need a label, but I can offer ways, to cope with whatever the situation is that's making the child feel like he's different and he's not going to do well. And it's all about building self-esteem and just letting him know that they're okay. Stutterers are the same way. My husband used to stutter as a child and through most of his adulthood. But as after we began our relationship and everything, and he was in a happier place at life, he used to tell people, and sometimes if he saw a child stuttering, he'd say, "It's okay. I used to stutter, and look at me now. I don't stutter." But he was
Yeah.
stuttering. He was stuttering anyway, but in his mind, his perception was that he wasn't stuttering.
Mhm.
And, that's did a lot for his self-esteem. I never corrected him, said, "Hon, yes, you are still stuttering. It's okay." But it was just amazed at how the mind perceives things. And it wasn't holding him back the way it held him back when he was younger. Um, and so everybody learns differently. Everybody has little quirks. Nobody's perfect. Um, and although it's doing your best is not always striving for perfection. And, I really try to, as we're building self-esteem, um, we look back into, like, how does the child feel about starting the school year? Were there any problems last year that they're worried about? Um, Very often with bullying, the child is bullied at home, either through a parent or an older child sibling, sometimes even the younger sibling.
Mhm.
And it's like if you perceive yourself as everybody's doormat, and I've seen a lot of adult women in, challenging situations that just feel like everybody's demanding from them and stepping on them, and, everything, they just want something and they can't give anymore.
Mhm.
With children, it's the same way. You have a perception that, okay, I guess it's okay that I'm bullied because that's just what happens to me. It's like the abused child protects the abuser, and you don't want to feel like you're defective and that's why you're being abused, so it must be okay. And the mind has ways of protecting you for all kinds of problems. But hypnosis also has a lot of ways, a lot of options. People's brains are wired differently, even if they're not learning disabled or math challenged or spatially challenged or anything. And sometimes hypnosis can actually almost rewire the brain. Once we see where the shortcut is, there could be little cue words or something to connect the dots in the brain and get them all, get the right side to listen to the left side. Get the ants in the pants to stop for a minute and say, okay, what are we supposed to do? Kids all have digital watches now. One of my boys used to set his watch for a certain time interval so he can just check in. Okay, am I doing what I'm supposed to do right now? Am I
Mhm.
where I'm supposed to be? If I had Apple AirTags back then, I probably would have sewn them in their clothes to find them when I wanted them. But um, there's just lots of ways that hypnosis helps. Sports performance is, again, it works with self-esteem. Um, it works with, just finding out what the child's afraid of. Um, and it depends on the sport, I guess, but a lot of professional sport people use hypnosis to help them set goals. That's both for learning and sports. Um, Help them stay on a healthy diet, because if you're not healthy, then the physical body's not going to perform at its best. Um, and with children, everybody else is eating junk food, but if you really want to make the cut, you probably better be in your best physical shape and drink milk instead of soda, and eat your vegetables. Um, and it's actually found that, there's a lot of research that, people tend to, human nature wants to procrastinate. That can be a problem when you're in school, and especially as you get to the middle school years and you've got deadlines and papers, and your parents shouldn't be doing your homework for you, so you have to learn to get it in on time, and a lot of the work is done on a computer now. um, so if you don't get your assignment in, the parents don't know until you get the grade in the email. And sometimes the ADHD kid didn't realize he even missed a deadline because,
Aw, yeah.
and it wasn't that he was deliberately not doing it. Back in my day, I might have just, well, the dog ate my homework, but um, there's just a lot of things that hypnosis can do for this time of year. Um, Parents know that their child has had a rough time, and, give them a break over the summer. One or two hypnosis sessions might be good to make sure that they're starting off the school year with a fresh mindset, that maybe it was rough last year, but this year it's going to be okay. And, I know what to expect. It's not totally foreign. Um, there's just a lot of things. Since your children are younger than mine, do you have any questions or issues like
Well,
that you've seen with your kids starting school?
yeah, well, I mean, the anxiety, the fear, they're already talking about mom. Because the other day I said we got to do some school shopping, let's get some sneakers, and my little guy's got very severe. He's never been diagnosed, but anxiety, and he started going, "Mom, I'm gonna have a heart attack. I don't want to talk about school. I want to have a heart attack," and he's going like this, and I'm like, "Breathe, breathe." So he has a lot of anxiety, and I
He
know that.
definitely would benefit from, some hypnosis to just teach him,
Yeah, he's just very anxious about going going back. Then you got the older one who's 8, and he's, just started football practice a few weeks ago. And I'm worried about managing all that when you get back. It's a lot and it's overwhelming. But my thinking is that anxiety. I remember that anxiety from like the back to school jitters the first day. Do you remember how that alone could cause you stress. And then being back in an environment, it's like, I wish they eased us into it by like a few hours. And no, just right. It's from summer staying up late to this. But what does that do to your child? It's
Well, the radio's already saying I mean, some areas of the country are already in school,
yeah,
but
true.
the radio's been reminding people for a while, parents, you might want to like cut back your bedtime, half hour a night for the 10 days before school starts. But what kids don't do, and parents don't do it either, so that's why I guess it's hard to tell your kid to do it. You really should turn off all electronics. That means even your cell phone, it means the TV an hour before you go to bed, because it gives your brain a chance to settle down. As long as that blue light is sparkling and flickering and triggering every synapses in your brain, you're not going to settle down and get a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
And that's been researched for more than 20 years with the Harvard Medical School and some other medical institutions. And I try to follow that myself, but I've noticed that if I'm answering emails past my ideal bedtime, I wake up with either a headache in the morning or I just feel like I didn't get enough rest. And, that's the only thing different I did. I didn't follow my routine and, turn everything off. And the other thing is routines are really important, and kids get out of routines in the summertime. Uh, since I went to Catholic school as a younger child, part of the routine was making sure your uniform was out, laid out for the next day, and we didn't have to make our lunches the day before, but, we had a routine where my mother didn't want us looking for socks that match and, polish your saddle shoes that we had to wear back then. We had those black and white saddle shoes. I'm a little older than you are. But, all that had to be done the night before. And, I had to have a breakfast in the morning. A lot of parents go to work before their kids go to school, and breakfast does not seem to be high on the list. It needs to be on the list. Doesn't have to be a fancy breakfast, but at least maybe some juice and a protein bar or something to, feed their brain while they're attacking all of these new stressors in the new school year.
Yeah.
And, it's important that we're busy too. And, I learned how was your school day is usually not as effective as, tell me how your first class was. What is your teacher like? Got to be more specific, because you say, how was your school day? You're going to get, oh, it was okay. And can I go now? Um, so it's important that you have to, even if, I mean, we are interested in our kids, but even if you're got other things on your mind, you really have to turn your focus to say, all right, this was a stressful day for him. Let's really go into detail and see if he needs help or that he's identified any stresses that, that he's worried about.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I
sometimes,
have anxiety just thinking about it. When I was a kid, it's traumatizing. Yes.
well, I'm listening to the commercials. I don't have to buy school supplies, but I understand like the average family spending $800 for school supplies this year. And more and more parents, and it's not just from challenge incomes, but more parents are being very practical and say, no, we're recycling. This is a recycling family. Let's see what we already have, and that we don't have to have everything brand new,
Hmm.
because you really don't. Once you use it, it's like a new car. When you go drive it off the lot and it's lowered in value, you get that new stuff that you're happy about, and half of it gets lost. uh, Everybody's going to school with phones now. It's challenging when they're $1,000 cell phones. um, it's, and even the best kid and the most conscientious kid is going to lose it. um, or some schools, the teachers confiscate it. Just make sure you know what the school rules are about
Yeah.
phones. You want them to have a phone for after school if you're not the one picking them up after school, and most parents aren't. But um, actually I mean, I think the Apple watches have really come down. The Samsung watches are good too. They have a way of making a phone call. They have to call for help. This way they're not taking the phone they may not like that idea. You could leave the phone at home if they have a smartwatch that's
Hmm.
tied to their phone. And, there's lots of times like if my phone's on a different level of the house or something like that, I can just make a phone call or answer a phone call from my watch. That might be an emergency
Yeah,
method to save on the risk of losing phones. A
true.
watch is only like 200 and some dollars as opposed to the thousand that the phone is.
Yeah, I never thought about that. My kids are 8 and 6. They want phones. They have iPads, but they don't bring it to school. But then during the day, I wonder, where are they? Are they okay? Or when are they coming home? I would love to have a tracking device, but that's a good way. Yeah.
They a lot more parents are getting the air tags and
Yep.
sewing it in their school bag or sewing it in the sole of their shoe or someplace that's inconspicuous. And then you always know where your kid is.
That's another good one. I heard about those. I didn't even know what those were until recently.
Well, if you fly, it's a good idea to use them because
They
I've
put
been
them in the
reading.
luggage, right?
Right, and I've had airlines tell people that I know, "Oh, I'm sorry, we left it in Chicago," and the person's looking at their phone, "No, actually, it's in New York, my layover, and, it's actually on this rack, this luggage station," That's how detailed it was, where it was in the airport, and they kept arguing. She got on another plane and flew back to New York and found it.
That's amazing what technology could do. My goodness. But you're right.
So
There is a lot of anxiety and stress, and we're talking about children. And by the way, what are the age ranges of children that could benefit from hypnosis?
anywhere from kindergarten, I think. I mean, something younger than 3 4 year olds, it's more like play therapy and using your imagination. But especially kids that have been in daycare since 18 months, they've had a lot of time practicing, and now they're not in their comfortable daycare situation. Maybe they're going to kindergarten for the first time. Um, the kids are feeling the stress of the younger ones, feel the stress of their siblings who are talking about, what if I don't
Yeah.
like my homeroom teacher? What's a homeroom teacher? Why can't I have one teacher? Um, it's it's
Yeah,
a lot
my
more
little guy's
stressful.
talking about the meeting new friends. I don't want to make new friends. He's scared, right? You get so
Yeah,
accustomed to the people, but it just takes time too. But that'd be interesting. So if someone is about to go to school to do a session with you as a child, how does it work? Do you prefer to work with their parent, talk to their parent, obviously first, you work with them, and then you start the virtual
well,
sessions
I
like
like
this?
to include for the younger children up to preteen, having the parents in the
Good,
session,
good.
because there's always that. I mean, I have all my child abuse clearances and everything else as a nurse, but there's always that nervousness, like, what is a stranger telling my
Yeah,
child?
true.
And
All
parents
right.
should be part of it, and that way they can reinforce, the positive things that I'm encouraging their child to think and feel. And
Perfect.
it's the child knows that we're not doing something without their parents, in case maybe it's
Makes them feel
I
more
accidentally
comfortable.
said something that didn't go along with their
Yeah,
beliefs or something, we can address it right away. And although I usually ask in an interview before I see a child, what is the background and that type of thing, is there anything you wouldn't want me, for any reason,
got it.
um, because it's a complicated world out there. It's a lot more complicated than when I was a kid, and I thought it was pretty hard
Sure
then.
is. Well, if we want to reach out to you, Peggy Smith, how do we do so?
You can go to notjusthypnosis.biz, or you can call or text me at 267-593-5557.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being here, and great topic for the kids getting ready for back to school. Or those are, oh my gosh, yeah, my niece goes in 2 weeks. She's in North Carolina. We start in September here in New York, but some people are already in school, but it always can benefit children too. Thank you for reminding us of that. Peggy, enjoy your day of work and relaxation. I hope a little bit later.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, I mean, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.